All right, welcome back to the channel. Going to try something a little different today. Try something new. Try to start a new series. See what you guys think. Until then, like, subscribe. If you're enjoying my videos, it supports me. It really helps. Check out our website. Check out our study materials. Links are going to be below in the description and the comments as well. And then follow us on Instagram. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to go over the task list and give you all the terms, give you the definitions, and then give you a question that you might see on the test based on the term. Okay? Because I always stress how important it is to learn your terms, learn your definitions, and how much easier it makes your exam if you know your terms, if you know your definitions. Okay. And I'm going to show you why. Because if you know your terms and you know your definitions, okay, the questions become way easier because you're just applying what you know to a situation, right? If you don't know your terms and definitions, then you're just trying to figure out the question as you go. Okay. So we're going to try it out, see what you guys think. All right. So let's start here. We're going to start with A1 and A2. So A1, prepare for data collection. So preparing for data collection, you're gathering required materials, you prepare the environment for data collection, and you know what data you're taking. Essentially, you're getting ready for session, okay? You're getting ready for the day, right? That's all this question is asking. Do you have the materials you need? Is the environment set up? And you know what you do? Do you know what you're doing, okay? So a question might look like this. You were required to take duration data today. What will be the best tool to bring to session? So this question is asking about a specific type of data you're taking, know what data you're taking, and it's asking what materials you need. Gather required materials, okay? So what do you need to take duration data? Well, we know duration data is a length of time, so we're measuring time. So look at a clicker counter. Well, a clicker counter measures how many times something happens. It's a count. We're not counting, right? We need a length of time. So A is out. B, a stopwatch. Can you measure a length of time with the stopwatch? Yes. So B looks good, okay? But always read all your answer choices. You're looking for the best answer. C, a camera. You could technically record your client and then look at a time, okay? But it's not the best answer, right? It's not the easiest thing to implement. It's not the easiest thing to use, right? And we're not asking about recording videos and things, right? So it's needlessly complicated. You don't you're not required, okay? It's not the best tool to bring to session, a camera, okay? D, edible reinforcers. Maybe, okay, your client might like reinforcers, but that's not what the question's asking. The question is asking, what is the best tool to take duration data? The best tool to take duration data would be some sort of stopwatch, okay? Some sort of timer, right? And that's what the questions will do. They'll give you some other answers like a camera, edible reinforcers that you might want to bring to session, but they're asking a specific question about the best tool for the data. Okay, so you need to read the question carefully and answer the question. The question is asking about the tool for duration data, which is a stopwatch. Okay, A2, frequency. Frequency is just a count, the number of times something happens. You're literally counting how many times something occurs. Okay, so frequency is the easiest form of measurement. It's a very basic form of measurement. All right. So a question might look like this. Timmy's boss wants to know how many sales calls Timmy makes. What type of measurement should he use? So what is Timmy's boss doing? Okay, he wants to know how many sales calls Timmy makes. How many? He's just counting the sales calls. Okay, so let's look at A, duration. Is he recording a length of time, right? Is he recording how long the calls are taking? No, he just wants to know how many. So duration's out. B, latency. Is he measuring the time in between two things? No. Remember our trick for latency and IRT? We're looking at the time in between two responses, okay? Here, we're just counting how many times a response happens, right? So latency's out, IRT's out. That leaves us with frequency. How many times does he make a sales call? That is our frequency. A2, duration. How long something takes, how long something lasts, the total amount of time for one response, okay? So duration is a measurement of time, a measurement of total time, okay? So the question, you are working with a client who is a slow eater. You want to find out how long it takes your client to finish a meal. What type of measurement should you use? We have A, rate. Well, what is rate? Rate is just frequency. There is time, right? But rate is just a frequency count. So are we counting anything? No. What's your key word? How long, okay? How long? We're measuring a length of time. Rate measures a count. So rate is out. Duration. Duration looks good, right? How long something takes, how long something lasts. You want to find out how long it takes for your client to finish a meal. How long does the meal take? What is the length of time that the meal takes? Duration looks good. Let's read the rest. Frequency. Again, frequency is just a count. We're not counting anything. Frequency is out. And then IRT. Are we measuring the time in between two things? No. Are we measuring the time in between two meals? No. We're only measuring how long a meal is taking. One meal, how long is it taking? One response at a time. That's it. Okay. IRT is out. Therefore, it has to be duration. Okay. A2, rate. Frequency with a time component. Frequency over time. The number of times per day, per hour, per minute. Okay. Keyword per. 5 times per hour. Keyword per. Okay. So all rate is a frequency count, and then you add a time component to it. Okay. So if I count how many times something happens, and then I say per hour, that's rate. The amount of times is your frequency. The per hour, per day, per minute, per second, that is your time component, and that's what makes it rate. So rate and frequency are often used interchangeably, but there's an important distinction. What is it? So people always use rate and frequency, okay, the same thing, because typically in ABA, there'll be some sort of rate, right? We want a frequency, and then we're going to say it happened that many times per hour, that many times per session, so on. So people use them interchangeably, but there is a difference, right? So what is the difference? Let's look at A. Rate is frequency with the time component added. What is our definition? Frequency with a time component, frequency over time. A looks pretty good. B, they are the same. Well, we know they're not the same, okay, because frequency is to count. Rate is frequency with time, right? So they're not the same. C, frequency is more accurate. Well, no, we're still using frequency and rate, okay? So we're using the same frequency count. So the accuracy, doesn't really change as far as frequency goes. It's the same thing, okay? We're just adding time to it. So C is out, and D, rate is better. Not necessarily. I mean, most people use rate. A lot of people use rate, okay, because it gives you more context, okay? But it's situation dependent, right? We're always looking at the situation. What's the best measurement given the behavior, given the situation? So we can't flat out say rate is better. Therefore, A, rate is frequency with a time component added. A2, latency. The time from the presentation of the SD to the start of a response, or the time in between the instruction and the start of a response. Okay, so from the time I give the instruction to the time the response starts, that's my latency. So it kind of looks like this. You have your SD. Okay, this is time in between, and then you have your response. Okay, so this right here, that time in between the SD and the response, that is your latency. Okay, let's look at a question. You are on the couch, your phone vibrates. It takes you 8 seconds to reach for your phone, open it, and check your messages. If you're taking data on latency, what behavior are you measuring? Okay, are you measuring the phone vibrating? Well, no. Remember, with latency and IRT, we're looking at the time in between two responses. Okay, and that's the giveaway. Okay, you're looking at two responses here, or in latency's case, an SD and a response. Okay, so you're looking at two different things, right? The phone vibrating is only one response. Okay, so we're not measuring latency on the phone vibrating. B, opening your phone and checking messages. Okay, well, let's look at the measurement here, right? Your phone vibrates. It takes you 8 seconds to reach for your phone, right? We don't have a time on opening it and checking your messages, okay? So that's not what we're measuring here, okay? C, your phone vibrating and reaching for your phone. So let's look at our question. Your phone vibrates. It takes you 8 seconds to reach for your phone. So what's the SD? Your phone vibrates. What's the response? Reaching for your phone. How long does it take you to start the response? It takes you 8 seconds. Therefore, your phone vibrates. Reaching for your phone. That is our latency. That is what we're measuring, okay? That is the only measurement we have here. The time in between the SD, which is the phone vibrating, and you reaching for your phone. And then D, sitting on the couch. Same thing as A. It's only one response, right? There's no latency involved. So tricky question, okay? Because, right, you could measure latency between opening your phone and checking messages, okay? But in this question, we only have a measurement for one thing, and that is phone vibrating and reaching for your phone. So read the question carefully. Make sure you answer the question. Okay, enter response time, A2. Time in between two responses, time between the end of one response and the start of the next. Responses must serve the same function. So now we're measuring from response 1 to response 2, okay? So the end of the first response to the beginning of the next. Responses must be in the same response class, okay? So barking to barking, screaming to screaming, okay? Those are easy because they're the same, they look the same, and they serve the same function. The responses don't necessarily need to look the same, but they have to serve the same function to measure IRT, okay? So that would look like this. You have your SD, your response 1, okay? And then your response 2. Our IRT is here, okay? This is our IRT, this portion here, right? The time between response 1 and response 2 is IRT. The time between SD and R1 is what? Latency. Okay, so that's the difference. That's the distinction. Let's look at a question. The dog barks at the TV. 8 seconds later, he barks again. 7 seconds later, he barks yet again. 3 seconds later, he barks and then doesn't bark again. What is the average IRT? So what are you going to do first here? You're going to find out what your IRTs are, okay? So we know response 1 to response 2. So what's our first response? Let's start there. Your dog barks at the TV. That's response 1. What's response 2? Later, he barks again. How long passed? What was the IRT? It would be 8 seconds, okay? So now, time between response 2 and response 3, okay, is what? He barks again. Later, he barks yet again. Time in between response 2 and response 3 is 7 seconds. That's our second IRT. And then what is our third IRT? That's going to be the time between this response and then the last response. That took 3 seconds, okay? So what is our average IRT? Well, you would add up all your IRTs. You would get 18, okay? Divide it by the total number of IRT count, and you would get 6. Okay, your average IRT, the average time in between barking, the average time in between two responses is 6. Okay, so don't be confused, right? 8 seconds is the time between response 1 and response 2, but it's not the average. 7 seconds is the time in between response 2 and response 3, but it's not the average. 3 seconds is the time in between response 3 and 4, okay? Or but it's not the average, okay? The average is 6 seconds. All right, so that wraps up our first video on this. Let me know if you like it. I'm trying something new. I'm going to go down the whole task list. We're going to do all the terms, all the definitions, plus an example question. I think it'll be really helpful. Again, I think you really need to know your terms and definitions to do well on the exam. So this is just a new thing I'm trying. Like, subscribe. Thank you for the support. Keep studying hard.